All right, good morning, Chair Postman, Member Garrett, staff, and guests. The lobby is open and recording has begun.
Thanks, Justin. Good morning, everybody. We'll convene the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board meeting for Wednesday, April 13th, 2022. Our first item is approval of the meeting minutes from the March 30th, 2022 meeting. Motion to approve.
This is Ali. I move approval of the March 30th board meeting minutes.
I'll second, and those are approved. We're going to spend a little time now updating everybody on some of the things that have been happening related to safety and security and cannabis licensee operations, mostly retail. There's a lot going on since the roundtable we held on March 29th. And we're going to start with updates on cashless payment systems and then on retail security itself. First, we'll turn it over to our CFO, Jim Morgan, to talk about some of the conversations that have been happening around cashless payment systems. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Postman, Board Member Garrett. I would like to provide an update on cashless payment systems. First and foremost, they exist in the industry. They're out there. They are serving some licensees. But what we've discovered in the last several weeks is it's not universally known that they are available or that they are supported and compliant with our rules. I first became aware of cashless payment systems probably in 2017. There was a provider that wanted to do business with our retailers, and it was not clear by our rules that was allowed. Certainly, even in 2017, we supported efforts to reduce cash in the system, and we were supportive of their efforts, and developed a rule that was adopted by the board in 2018 to set the guidelines for what's appropriate for cashless payment systems. Since then, a number of other providers have entered the industry, and they are out there. We participated in a meeting last week that was convened by the governor's office that brought together a number of different stakeholders: Department of Financial Institutions, banks, credit unions, industry members, and a couple of these providers that do provide cashless payment services. And from the very beginning of that meeting, it was clear that some people are just in the industry are just not aware that those systems are out there. There are other roadblocks, perception, largely about the cost of those systems. We've learned that the transaction fees for these cashless payment systems are fairly comparable to transaction fees for any event for credit card acceptance. So the merchant fees for credit cards, when cannabis is finally legalized federally and banks and payment card systems are able to participate in the industry more freely, those will be normal cost of business like any other retail operation has. So we're working to our effort right now is going to be on education. There were a number of other ideas that were floated, many of which are either not currently possible or would take a very long time to implement, that could provide cashless payment processes. But the reality is they're already there. There are already vendors serving the market. I'm aware of other vendors that are developing products to serve the market and looking to gain a foothold in the industry. So our focus is going to be on one, with our licensees, making sure they're aware that one, these systems do exist today. Two, that they are compliant with our rules, and encourage them. We've not had any active engagement before in this because the conflict of trying to promote private businesses. but with steering clear of singling out any particular provider, we do want to make sure that folks are aware that they're there and that's a service they can use to reduce the amount of cash in their business. We've also verified that that it fits well within our rules for them to have signage, even branded signage for the particular provider that they use, to make it clear that these that a system and processes are in place to reduce the amount of cash in that business. And we envision them, putting a sign directly on the front door saying, to the effect that this business reduces the cash on hand by using cashless payment systems, something to that effect. So our focus is on outreach, and just to wrap up, that outreach also includes working with other agencies, coordinating our messaging with the Department of Financial Institutions. They plan to put messaging on their website, making it clear that these systems are out there and that they are compliant with their rules and regulations. And we're also partnering with labor and industries on messaging, certainly with workplace fatalities and risk. They have a role, and so we're coordinating with them on messaging as well. So that's our primary focus: make sure people are aware, taking steps to adopt, and really finally, that one of the big challenges with cashless or cash-based industry is that every time one of these robberies is reported in the news, it's emphasized that these are cash-based businesses. So we also want to take steps to try to change that message in the media. There were 2 articles just this week pointing out it was one particular vendor with a cashless payment system and highlighting a licensee that had adopted their system recently in an effort to reduce cash. So that messaging will be important as well to change the perception that these are all cash businesses, and hopefully begin to turn the tide a little bit on this critical issue. So that's all I have for that. Any questions?
Yeah, a couple. You I think sketched out the hurdles to some of the existing systems pretty well. One of the things that it seems to me that the biggest hurdle likely is it's just not as convenient as if you could walk in with a credit card or a debit card. There's some extra steps that in most cases the customer has to take, which is sort of a tough position for a retailer to try to move from cash. You need to convince customers to download an app or whatever else it is. Are there, and this is partly a DFI issue, I suppose, but you're talking with them. Is there any regulatory piece that is stopping those companies from doing that in any other way? Does that make sense? Is there a more streamlined system that's possible with any regulatory step on the state's part, or does it just, that next step gets us into, federal banking law?
I think you're right. The next step, the ways that it would be more convenient typically rely on using the national payment card system, either for a debit or a credit card. And there have been some solutions that try to skirt the rules of that system and find ways to allow people to use their debit and credit cards, but those have been found to be problematic as well. One of those options it is known as a cashless ATM, where a kind of a virtual ATM system is connected to the licensee's point of sale system. It allows them to use a bank card right there. But also there have been news reports that while that's not illegal, and we don't have a say in whether they could do that or not, Visa has come out and said that violates their terms of agreement with with that retailer. So because it obscures the fact that they're actually using it to purchase marijuana.
Oh, I
So
see. Right.
it violates their terms of agreement. So any of the systems that have allowed direct use of a debit or a credit card have their own challenges. And you're absolutely right. The convenience of walking in and just being able to run your debit card in the ATM that they provide right there next to the cash register is very convenient, especially compared to some of the options where they're using preloaded cards. Well, it's certainly less convenient for somebody to have to take money out of their bank ahead of time to preload a card so they can use it in a cannabis retail shop.
And you can only use it in one specific shop in that case, right?
Or another shop that uses the same service provider.
Well, that's okay. Yeah.
So, but fairly limited.
Yeah.
So they'll always be fighting the convenience factor of somebody being able to run their debit card in the ATM inside the shop.
Yeah.
There are ways that they could incentivize. It's within our rules for them to provide incentives, discounts for using these payment systems. So if they really want to make every effort to reduce cash in their store, they can actually sign up for one of these systems. They can promote it. They can provide incentives to customers to use it. So it's not the best option for customers, and customer convenience will ultimately drive adoption.
Yeah.
But there are some.
Member Garrett's got a question.
I
Yes.
don't even know if what I'm saying makes sense, and I'm just speaking without. But when David mentioned the word app, it made me think about Cash App. How could something like a Cash App work in this environment to where every store, because their deposits are going into the legit account for the cannabis stuff, the credit unions or whoever allow it, if they have a Cash App link to that account, can something like that work?
Well, so something like that could certainly work, and I believe there are payment services that use a similar approach, but using like Cash App or PayPal, services that provide payment services already, those companies don't participate in the cannabis industry. So using a widely available commercial application like that is not available. So these other providers either have to try to mimic that process or come up with some of their own. And some of them are relatively straightforward, but they require the customer to download an app and create an account. One of the simplest methods is using the banking system, the automated clearinghouse, they call it. And that's just the ACH system that we're all probably familiar with without knowing it. That's the system that is used for direct deposit of paychecks. And it's a system that moves money from one bank account to another bank account. And there are a few of these providers that use that sort of system. So a customer would download their app, load their, create an account, put their bank account information in the app, and then when they go into the retail shop, the transaction, when the transaction is finalized, it just moves the money from the customer's account directly into the retailer's bank account.
Right.
So, and there are other systems that find ways to get around the problem, but they all require some sort of app on the customer's part, some sort of account that many people may find is less convenient than just running your debit card in the ATM.
Well, and then there was the one that's, like at the counter, you're buying Bitcoin, which then is transferred. And, I mean, none of it is simple because of what we have to do with the existing federal rules and the credit card companies, not just reluctance, but just inability to engage in this. So they're all just kind of different forms. None of them are as easy. I'm hoping they're all going to get better just technology wise. But, you mentioned incentives for customers, so a store could say, if you're using a cashless system, it's got a discount over a cash price, which is the opposite of the way those things usually work, I guess. But
Right.
but we need like a series cascading incentives. I want to incentivize the financial services companies to come up with better ways. I want to incentivize the licensee to adopt this, and then the customers. I mean, I'm sure we all agree we want a safer system that is not attractive to violent criminals. There's a lot of good that can come of it, but it's not easy. And it's going to take, I think we're going to have to keep doing what you've been doing, Jim, which is working with Department of Financial Institutions and others to see what's out there, to see what could be out there. And then we have to keep figuring out how we share that information with licensees is again, we're not going to promote one business over another. We're not going to, some suggestions have been made about could we do an RFP for a service? Couple of problems. One, I don't think that's the state's a good place for the state to be. But also, it's still the same system that exists today. We would and then you would have less choice for people. So I don't think that's an answer. But I do think, and I know you're working on this, there's a lane there for us to be communicating with licensees and those companies and the state regulators on the banking and financial services side to just basically do everything we possibly can to get this out there.
Right, and that's exactly our approach.
Yeah. So, okay, great. Any other questions, Member Garrett, for Mr. Morgan? Okay, thank you. Appreciate your work on this throughout.
Thank you.
And we will have you back for an update soon, I'm sure. Let's turn to the sort of physical security and crime prevention side of it. Chandra Beatty, our Director of Enforcement and Education, held a meeting yesterday with law enforcement and some retailers, licensees, to talk about this, and has been deeply engaged in these conversations. Good morning, Director Brady.
Good morning. Thank you, Board Chair Postman and Board Member Garrett, and good morning and welcome to folks in attendance. I just wanted to share with you in response to your questions and our concern for the safety of our licensees and staff in the face of the retail robberies that are occurring. Enforcement Education has been working with partners inside and outside the agency to provide support, information, education. One of the things we did, as you mentioned, was partner with our finance and communications team, as well as general law enforcement in the communities and jurisdiction in which these robberies are occurring, to host a forum for retail cannabis licensees, and our staff also attended to talk about best practices and observations. And we had 5 other law enforcement agencies in attendance that shared some of their learned recommendations and best practices. In addition, we've been providing staff training within the LCB. Also, we have been partnering with LCB Finance to look at options for supporting licensees in the way of training or possibly security assessments and recommendations. So those are just some of the things we're working on. We also met with L&I to talk about things we can do in the area of employee safety for those retail licensees, employees. And then, as always, as you know, our officers and compliance consultants are available for questions, thoughts, and support.
All of this costs money. Or I would say most of these things that anybody has talked about cost money, and it's going to fall on the retailer, on the licensee. We did hear, I thought, some interesting things from law enforcement. One detective in particular who's getting pretty detailed about the sort of cameras and camera placement and things like that. Are we still going to be able to, work on that kind of level of engagement and help just bring that knowledge door to door if necessary?
Yeah, so one of the things I mentioned was potentially offering a security assessment and recommendation. And
Okay.
so right now, what we're trying to quickly determine is if we have the ability to contract for that, what the scope of that would be, and get that all put together to see if it's an appropriate place for it to come from us. And that's the path that Director Morgan and I are walking down right this minute. The other
Yeah.
thing that I heard from many of the local law enforcement jurisdictions yesterday was that they're doing this for their licensees right now, that they're getting phone calls and that their community PROACT teams are responding to those types of requests. I know that Tacoma Police Department is doing that. I thought I heard from King County and Seattle both that they're doing that. So
Bellevue is doing it. They've met with
Bellevue-
all, they have a small number of licensees in the city, but they've met with all of them.
Yeah, and so there are a lot of agencies that are proactively doing that,
Yeah.
but also I know that because that's where my experience is prior to the LCB, I know that we tend to respond pretty positively to those requests when they come in. So that's another option that somebody that's worried right now can do while we're working on a plan that will carry us through being prepared for what's to come for our licensees.
Yeah. And, again, because it costs money, we've had this question from licensees, and it came up in our roundtable a couple weeks ago. Is there any way for, a tax incentive for capital costs or anything of that sort? And mentioned this in other meetings, but we'll continue to. I think there is a openness and a willingness on the part of people in the governor's administration to look at that. I haven't heard anybody say, heck no, or it's nuts. I think we're getting a group of people to look at it. It can't be done without legislative action. So none of us have the authority to say, yes, you can do that. So it's something that's a little further down the line if we can get there. But I think it's within the realm of the possible and is a reasonable thing to put on the table. Certainly, at least until we have federal action that loosens some of these other things. So yeah. Do you know?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
There are some things that are outside of our control that are frustrating for our licensees, and we talked through some of those yesterday's. Why aren't these people getting longer sentences? Why aren't they being prosecuted to the fullest? And it's obviously not something that we have a lot of influence over.
No,
But
although I'm not even sure I mean, I don't know that's the issue, right? I mean, some of
Right.
these, the most high profile crimes, we need arrests, we need trials. I mean, so I'm not sure where that data is coming from, but.
Yeah. Well, it's just things that people are expressing. Right now,
Yeah.
they're fearful, and so we're all doing everything we can to provide support and figure out what we do have control over that we can influence and impact.
And these are issues that face wide breadth of crime, unfortunately, where people, when they are victims of these crimes, are forcefully introduced to the criminal justice system. And there are a lot of frustrations built into that. And it can be slow moving and it doesn't always end up, as one would like. So, I hear that both from licensees and I hear that from law enforcement. So I think we can agree on that. What I was going to ask, because you do have education enforcement people who are out there all the time, have you heard from your team on, what are people, from the licensee's perspective, kind of what the temperature is right now and what are their questions or?
Yes, and actually, I just yesterday reviewed data from last month, and as you know, I'll be reporting to you on that later. But our cannabis team's education contacts went up 78% last month, so I can confirm that they're out there doing that work. And then we're answering all kinds of questions and providing all kinds of information. Just what are the rules? How does the law impact this decision? Can we do this? Can we change operations in this way? Are we allowed to post this? Lots of different questions that we're able to answer. So as you have those questions and you're working through best practices, and we're available as a resource for sure.
Yeah, and as you know, CFO Morgan mentioned, people aren't even sure, are we allowed to do this sort of transaction or this sort of transaction? And so there's just a lot of unknowns or questions that haven't come up yet. So we will continue to answer those.
And one of the things I'm really proud of is that our division and the staff in enforcement and education work really well with licensing. So when we get those questions, we know who to call in licensing and finance. So when we get finance questions, we know who to call in finance. And the same is across the agency. So we're able to help make those connections, and we're doing a lot of that as we're out in the field too.
Okay, that's great. All right, I think that's it. And seeing no other questions, thank you, Director, and we'll see you this afternoon. All right, we will now move to rulemaking, and we have one action item, but first Kathy Hoffman, the Policy and Rules Manager, will give us a general update on timelines. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Postman and Board Member Garrett. Here's a brief update on our rules in progress for this month, and I'll begin with rules related to alcohol first. The project concerning axe throwing at liquor license premises, is scheduled for hearing at the next regularly scheduled board meeting. That's April 27th. So far, we've received 3 comments in support of the proposal, and we anticipate bringing final rules to you for adoption on May 25th. Moving on to the project to implement 2022 legislation, and that's Senate Bill 5940 regarding an endorsement for certain liquor licensees to offer contract packaging services. Our project began this week with an initial project team meeting, and we anticipate bringing the CR 101 to you for review and approval also on April 27th. And so moving on to general rulemaking, project to establish a new rules section that would allow the agency to serve and accept documents electronically is at the stakeholder feedback stage, and we released conceptual draft rules for public comment this Monday, so that was April 11th. We're inviting feedback through April 25th on the conceptual draft that was offered, and those comments will be reviewed and considered. We plan on bringing the rule proposal to you for review and approval on May 11th. And under that timeline, we could bring rules for final adoption as soon as June 8th. So before I move to cannabis, any questions on those projects?
No.
Okay, thank you. So I'll move on to cannabis.
Please.
The rule project to make technical revisions and updates to align the pesticide action level rules, and that's WAC 314.55.108, with the recent updates to cannabis quality control rules, is scheduled for hearing on May 11th. We've received 2 comments on the proposal and several questions. So following the hearing, we can bring final rules to you for adoption as soon as June 8th also. Moving on, the project to implement House Bill 1210 that goes into effect on June 9th, I believe, and replaces the word marijuana with cannabis throughout the Washington State statute is well underway. We're preparing to present the CR 105 to you on April 27th. The legislation authorizes the LCB to use an expedited rulemaking process, and that's described in the Administrative Procedures Act under RCW 3405-353, if anyone's interested, that allows us to make this word revision in rule without a public hearing. So once the CR 105 is filed with the code revisor, there's a waiting period of 45 days after publication before we can bring you the CR 103 for final rule adoption. So under that timeline, the earliest possible date we could bring final rules to you for adoption is July 6th. So before I move into the presentation of the CR 102 for social equity and cannabis, any questions on those projects?
Nope, not today.
All right, so if I may, I will move to the next agenda item. Thank you. So I'd like to request your approval to file the CR 102 proposal that amends current rule and establishes a new rules section to create the Social Equity in Cannabis program. By way of background, the Social Equity in Cannabis Task Force was established by statute and has met continuously since 2020. Several subgroups were created to address various topics, and their work informed task force recommendations provided to the LCB on January 6th of this year. While the Social Equity Task Force completed that work, we began to review existing rules to see what we could do to reduce barriers to entry in the legal cannabis market and revise rules around background checks. Those rules became effective in early October of last year. The CR 101 for this project, or the pre-proposal statement of inquiry, was filed on October 27th of last year. No comments were received on that pre-proposal statement of inquiry. Shortly after that, and as we waited for task force recommendations, we began to review existing rule related to licensure to see where we might revise language, better describe processes, and modernize to increase readability. These are offered as the amendment you'll note in the rule package. And they do not change the substance or operation of those rules. As part of our outreach, we hosted an informational session on February 17th for anyone interested in participating in the rule development process. Once conceptual draft rules concerning proposed WAC 314-55-570 to establish the Social Equity in Cannabis program were prepared, we hosted a listen and learn session on March 23rd. We've provided attachments in the rule package concerning the extent of our messaging on this session, and it included legislators, the Social Equity Task Force, and over 32,000 Gov delivery recipients. We received a great deal of feedback during that session, and it's presented in table form as an attachment to the CR 102 memo. We listened to that feedback and incorporated it into the proposal before you today. Along with the amendments to existing rule, the new rules section provides definitions unique to the section and the program, describes social equity applicant requirements, describes the social equity application process, offers additional provisions such as license mobility within a county, and describes the application withdrawal process. A comparison table that aligns the Social Equity Task Force recommendations, statutes, and the proposed rule can be found on page 7 of the CR 102 memorandum. The only difference between the task force recommendations and the proposal is that the scoring rubric identifies race-neutral factors that we hope will achieve the social equity goals expressed in House Bill 2870, and that was the enabling legislation for this work. I would note that this approach is supported by the Governor's Office, as noted in Attachment G. So if approved for filing today, notice will be published in the Washington State Register, and the public hearing will be held on May 25th. Under that timeline, we can bring final rules to you for adoption as soon as June 8th. So I'd like to ask for your approval to file this CR 102 proposal today. Thank you.
Member Garrett, any question or comment before we move to a vote?
No, just thank you, Kathy. This was a lot of work. You did a lot of outreach to the community, and the listen and learn was very well attended. And I know that we took notes of a lot of the comments that was made and carefully reviewed everything to see out of those comments what we could incorporate. And we did make some changes based on comments. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Member Garrett.
You know, this work's been going on nonstop, and you know, I think we've been talking about this since the day I started a little over a year ago, and I know you all started it before that. And the legislature had their efforts too, which this session didn't produce anything, but we never stopped working towards this. This is an important step. As I mentioned yesterday, it doesn't by any stretch mean we're done. We're just trying to get to the starting line here so we can actually make these things happen, which we can now see, and we now have this path ahead of us. So thanks to you, thanks to the licensing team and Becky Smith's leadership there and her key staff who have been so involved, and Member Garrett, as well as so many other people in our agency, from the director on down, and our wise counsel from the AG's office and others who've helped us get to where we are and come up with a rubric that we think is the best path forward, I think is what we can say. So with that, I will entertain a motion to approve the CR 102 regarding social equity in cannabis.
I move approval of the CR 102 regarding social equity in cannabis.
Great, and I will second, then that is approved. Thank you, Ms. Hoffman. Appreciate all the work.
Thank you, Chair Postman and Board Member Garrett.
And with that, we're going to move to the general public comment portion of the meeting. A couple of reminders for everybody. All our meetings are recorded, so you'll be recorded. Once you're called on, I'll call on you based on the list I have. Just be patient for a second, and Dustin will enable your audio and video. We'll give you a chance to do that. And when you do then start, state your name and affiliation, if any, for the record. You'll be given 4 minutes to talk. Everybody's given 4 minutes. When you have 30 seconds left, Dustin will interject a 30-second warning for everybody. At the end of that 30 seconds, you'll be asked to stop, and we'll appreciate your adherence to that so we can get everybody in here. With that, I'm going to call first person signed up, which is Sammy Saad. And Mr. Saad, as you make your way there and get unmuted, I'm going to ask you personally to refrain from talking about people's religion, if possible. You've done it a couple of times, and I've asked you about it. I just want to make that plea to you yet again, that this is not the place to talk about that. So with that, you can have your 4 minutes. Dustin, is Mr. Saad on the line?
He is, and he has controls over his device, so he should be able to turn his microphone on himself.
Okay, so Mr. Saad, you're probably still, yeah, you're still muted on the Teams app, looks like here. So if you can just click on the little microphone on the open window there, you should be able to talk. And we're going to move on. We'll come back to you, Mr. Saad. Christopher King.
Hello? 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 Am I there?
You're on.
Oh, terrific. Thanks, guys. Listen, just a couple of quick things here. One of the things that I want to get around is that the LCB has a documented history of being arbitrary and capricious in its actions, okay? And I'm not the only one who said that. I mean, that was stated in the Cornell School of Law and Public Policy research that was done with your favorite cannabis firm here, Miller Nash. Many of the things that are in that report, I've already said in the lawsuit with John Novak, okay? So, when I get online and I see some of the board members and, people throwing up their eyebrows at me and everything, no, I wish you wouldn't do that, because the things that we're saying have been documented for a while. And I even interviewed William Clark, your senior licensing specialist, okay? And Jim Clark's, but keep saying Jim. Jim is a race car driver. I never interviewed him. William Clark, your specialist, said that it's arbitrary, capricious, and racist, okay? And so I'm just going with that. And I'm also going to remind some of your staffers that, given the number of civil rights cases that I've resolved, I've worked for Ted Mearns, who was a preeminent civil rights professor, law professor. I've done a lot of things in this world relating to civil rights. I probably forgot more civil rights law than any of you will ever know. That's a fact. So we're going to get to the analysis now of what we're going to talk about. Oh, one more thing about civil rights. You can't really tell Sammy not to mention Jewish or any other religion. It's a fact. Most of my friends actually are, light-skinned Jews. But unless he's making hate speech, you can't really restrict what he says. When he makes an observation to say that if you're white or Jewish, you get what you want with LCB, I might not say it, but you can't stop him from saying it, okay? Next point. On a constitutional point, even worse than that, we have it on information and belief from very respected sources that if you're allied with me, you won't get a license, okay? That's a constitutional violation too. You got the First Amendment right of association with me. You've got the right to petition the government for redress, which is being impinged on if you condition that, okay? And you've got government actors. This is a government program that's being, enforced or set out through some private actors. All of you could be liable under 42 U.S. Code 1985, all right? Watch it. I expect my people to get fair respect when they go for their licenses in this new program, okay? Next, let's define what that program is, okay? Under the civil rights rubric or framework of analysis, you need to have a compelling, well, there's rational basis. That's like when you put a street sign up, that's nothing. But we're dealing with a strict scrutiny here. You got to have a compelling governmental interest. Let's define what that is first. The compelling governmental interest, as it started out in equity, was to help the blacks predominantly who started this industry, okay, and took the risk. Not just the blacks who were selling weed in the 50s and 60s, okay? I have people in my family who work with mafia people. I know all about that, all right? I'm talking about the people who stuck their neck out to go public, to register with these agencies that were still busy discriminating against them. And they defined the market for legal cannabis out here. And then you got those folks, and then Libby Haynes, the only black woman I know of, the only black person we know of, and black woman to pass through the gauntlet. And then they took it from her after she passed through the lottery. Meanwhile, they're working out deals with people like Khalifa, who your attorneys identified as basically crooks, $4.5 million in judgments against them. They're working out deals with
You have 30 seconds.
Thank you. So there's a compelling governmental interest, and it's narrowly tailored. You take those 39 licenses, and let's say there's 15 or 20 blacks that can show they were around back then. Well, you give those the first licenses, then you filter out the rest to other people who were in medical at the time, and the Johnny-come-latelys come last, okay? That's the last consideration in that constitutional analysis, okay? So, respect the elders. They started this. They deserve the first set of licenses. And I'm going to leave you with that. And I am a hearing officer. I'm not a federal judge, but I'm a hearing officer because I know the law. Okay, I know. And I'm just going to briefly conclude, as you allow everybody else to do. So like I say, I'm going to briefly conclude now because, yeah, I do know the law. That constitutional analysis is very valid. You can ask all your lawyers, and that's where we need to start. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Let's go back again and check if Mr. Saad's available to join us. You're still muted, Mr. Saad. You came unmuted. There you go.
Okay. Yeah, you can hear me well. Hi, everyone. My name is Sami Abdullah Saad. I am mixed with little Jewish, little Arab, African. I don't discriminate against Jewish, but it's true. The first medical weed shop just came recently, after 2014. He's a white Jewish. He's downtown in Linder. Everybody can see that force in Linder. You can see it. Uncle Ike's, he's a white Jewish. And more. The one right next to me in 323 North 105th Street. So if it's two people, they say your ear is not there, you should touch it. I'm not against Jewish, I love them. But we started first. We're being disrespected. So we should get first. The other thing is from Miss Ellie Garrett. Miss Ellie Garrett, your staff never called me. That's a lie. The second thing is I call you and I was so happy because I have the people publicly to hear you from my community. You disappointed me because I have you in the speakerphone. You said, do not call me again. Unfortunately, later, I find out Emerald Hayes, she know what Emerald Hayes. Emerald Hayes is her ex-boyfriend weed shop and it's being legalized and it's being given them license. His name is Jim B. Cannon. Jim B. Cannon, he used to date Ellie Garrett. And this is not accusation. Everybody know that. Christopher know that. Gavin know that. All of us know that. Why only her ex-boyfriend get his weed shop reinstated, not us? That's a no-no. She came in 2016 to the LCB to reinstate her ex-boyfriend license. That's
No,
not acceptable. Us, we've
Mr.
been
Saad,
lost.
you can give
And
us
Ms.
your opinion
Elliott,
and
we
your
respect
thoughts.
you. We
Don't
want
make
to help you out,
accusations
but you guys not
like that.
helping us. And you're Mr. Shalom, Mr. David, please let me to speak. Shalom. Shalom. I don't disrespect you. And you believe you're from a Jewish community. I have much respect for you. I'm mixed with you. So why you only your people be reinstated? Why not us? Second thing is Black Excellent. They are partner with them, with her ex-boyfriend. They get their weed shop and they cannot speak publicly because you guys told them that because you guys settled with them and they filed a lawsuit. I have a lawsuit too, me and Kevin. We help in a community. I've been before everyone. I am African Arabic speaker. None of us are Muslim. There is no Muslim in this field. We're being disrespected. I represent the Muslim community too. We should be there. Kevin, his name is Kevin, but he's Muslim too. We should be there, me and him. You guys never want to settle with us, even you say, hey, 2 people, we can give a license. You guys don't want to do nothing. This is not equality. Second thing is we have meeting with my community and the social equity groups. A lot of people from my community that came in Matt Baker, they've been assigned with the social equity group. Sherry from the city of Seattle came. All her social equity group came. My community, they said it, and all Rainier community, they said, we need Sammy to get his license back. And if this is not acceptable and it's not a fairness, and we feel being disrespected, he represents the Black community in Rainier, as well as those Black people being disrespected like Kevin and all of us. This is not respectful for us. If you guys want to give license, you should give the people being lost, like Christopher said, or this is not going to be for us. This is for other people. And this is you guys, your own interest. The second thing is it you guys taking people opinion or you guys your own opinion and making their own rules? If it's people opinion, you should guys listen to the community because this is guys, you guys damaging the community. The second thing about the robbery, let me tell you, I told you and warned you before the robbery a long time ago, is a big protest by Uncle Ike's. They came multiple times. They said, if you guys do not give those Black people their license, the one they start the medical, they're going to rob those stores. They're going to make violence. This is became like Mexico when Chaba being happened. We are not the Chaba people, but that's what happening. We do not like what happening, but you guys caused this and you caused damages. And I want the FBI to be involved, the general attorney to be involved, to be investigated, to those to be educated. You guys, please, Mr. I really like to support you guys, you, Miss Ellie Garrett, and all of you guys. But this is not acceptable, Miss Ellie Garrett. Only her ex-boyfriend get a license. They call it. They call it. Okay, please let me to say this one. The name of the shop, and Christopher can tell you the name of the shop. Kevin, he will tell you the name of the shop. Emerald Hayes. That's Kenny B. Jenin, or whatever his last name is. That's her ex-boyfriend. She can answer. I never spoke to her staff. She disrespected me. That's why.
We're going to have to move on. Gave you a little extra there to finish since I interrupted you. Kevin Shelton. Mr. Shelton, I see you're online, but you're still muted on the Teams app. And still, let's try Libby Haynes Marcel. Are you with us and able to join?
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Libby Haynes Marcel, and I'm a little I'm trying to right now I'm trying to figure all this stuff out because I'm a Black woman, as you can see, but I actually was a part of the industry starting in 2012, actually, when they first introduced the I-502. And I'm a little emotional right now because I'm a regular mom, just a regular person. I didn't come into this industry with a whole lot of money. I just wanted to provide for my kids that American type dream, right? This was a way for me coming from my community because I've watched so many Black people go to jail over marijuana. So I found an opportunity to send my kids to college using marijuana, right? I have all sons, all Black sons, 5 of them. This was an opportunity for me. I worked my behind off. I went broke, busted. Listen, I'm telling you, credit, in debt, everything. I didn't have a whole lot of money. I worked hard. I went to all the meetings, all the trainings, everything. I did everything I thought was right. I entered into the lottery. They had people enter, then they said, okay, we're gonna start all over. Start all over. You had to redo it. They created a lottery to the point to where I monitored this whole system every day. Like I'm on top of it. I have emails requesting to make sure that I did everything right. And the reason why I entered is because I qualified, right? I have criminal history. It's old. It's 30 years old. But I met the requirements. I did everything that I needed to do to be in this industry. The only thing I didn't have was a whole bunch of money. And it definitely didn't have, this is the difference in now, and it's blowing me back because it's like they're saying we want to help Black people get into the industry. I didn't have that support at my time at all. I did not have any of that support. I had to reach out to people, and a lot of the people that I reached out to, especially the people my color, they couldn't even believe it because they're so used to getting done wrong or being mistreated that they didn't even think that it was possible. And here's the thing, I entered the lottery. This is the crazy part. I monitored the system so much that the day they had set the lottery, I would check and I didn't see my name in my lottery system, well, my lottery pool that I was in. I end up trying to email and call them. This like, we're not doing anything on the phone. I had to drive to Olympia with my application packet in order to make sure that I was in the right lottery. These are the efforts that I put in. Then only to come to find out that they denied me my license, not because of anything I've done or anything that was wrong with me or anything, because the person I was married to had a criminal history. I did everything. I basically begged the liquor control board, listen, we'll do anything you say, whatever you want us to do to monitor us to make sure my husband wasn't going to get a dime. If I passed away, he wouldn't have got one red cent from this industry. To only find out in the middle of a pandemic, 2020, this is when all this started. I got a 90-year-old mom that had COVID. I can show you her. I got all the records.
30 seconds.
That during the midst of this pandemic, all these changes are being made. The same reason why they denied me my license, that rule doesn't exist. They've worked with people. I got emails. I got proof that they've worked with people that weren't quite qualified to help them, but no one never tried to help me. And I deserve a license. That's it. My kids deserve. I got a son. I've struggled and I've worked my behind off. I deserve to get a license. Somebody needs. You guys need to do the right thing. I deserve a license. I really, really do. This is not. I'm glad that you guys are trying to work with the Blacks, but somebody should have reached out to me. The minute they changed this rule, somebody should have came to me and said, listen, this was wrong. You were right. You were right, Miss Haynes, Marcel. You were right. I went all the way to the Supreme Court. I did what I needed to do. I didn't write. Yeah. I didn't cuss you guys out. I didn't do any of that. I tried to work with you. I can see why these guys are hurt. I've been damaged from this. You guys need to give me a license. I should be first on the list, number one.
Okay, ma'am, I need you to wrap up. Your time is up.
I should be number one. My kids deserve this. My kids have all been damaged. They couldn't believe, they were excited to see their mom that worked so hard. And then to see me it's almost like I got weak. I felt so, I didn't trust the system anymore because I was like, I did everything. You guys are the board. Let's do the right thing. Let's not pretend like we're trying to help folks. Let's really help the people, especially those that were damaged.
Okay.
Let's do the right thing.
To wrap up there. Let me just,
thank you for hearing me. I think as a community, we all need to do the right thing.
I agree with you 100%. Let me tell you, we didn't just listen. We hear you. I was not here back in that day. I don't know all the details, but I'll tell you, what we've just approved is the next step in creating the system that you say you want, that we do it. Now, I know you think it should be at the top of that list. It's not the way this new system is going to work, but it is a different system. And it has, and Member Garrett and others are more expert on this than I, and I'm happy to get some people to talk to you about how that system is going to work. Before this year is out, we will have applications available that, as you point out, you don't have the hurdles that you did, but in fact, it is designed to try, when we have this scoring list of applicants, it addresses many of the things you just talked about. I know it's not everything that you want, and it's certainly not what was in place when you came to this business originally. But I don't think that it means that it will never happen. We have a new system that is about to launch.
But how about righting the wrongs? How about, no, listen, that's the reason why I'm so emotional, because this is not the first situation I've been in to where I've been discriminated against. Nobody, and I have proof. I have proof that the Liquor Control Board worked with folks and helped them get licenses. Listen, back then, and here's the thing. I've already put in the work. I literally put in the work. It's only right. We got to do listen to this. I know about the systems and the rules, but sometimes we need to, matter of fact, we need to do the right thing. We just do. We need to do the right thing.
But we are going to have to do it by the rules. We have new rules coming. What I would ask is that you at least, not asking anything really, what I would tell you is that what we can do is to make sure that, again, you know what these next steps are, that we have somebody who can work with you to go through what those steps are going to be when that day comes, when the applications are going to be accepted, what that scoring sheet looks like, what you can do for that. I think that's our best option right now. It's not everything, but it's not nothing. And when you talk about righting wrongs, there's based on individual basis, and I understand, I feel what you're saying, but we have a system. We have to work within these rules. We can't just say, we don't think this one is right or wrong. The legislature would yank our authority back in a second. And we're already ahead of them. As I was saying when we were talking with Kathy Hoffman, we've been out front on this. We're doing rulemaking. We're not waiting for legislation. That was one of the things that people in the community came and demanded. And they were right. Don't wait. So we didn't wait. So we're working on it. And all I can keep saying, it's not perfect. It's not as timely. It's not going to answer all these questions, but it's not nothing. It is a possibility. And we don't know. I certainly have no idea who will get one of those dozens of licenses that could be available before the end of the year. But without this work, there wouldn't be any until the legislature approved law. Right?
Here's the thing. The difference between me and all these other people right now, because right now you're inviting them to the party. I wasn't invited, but I came and I put in the work. This is the difference. I put in the work almost 10 years ago. I put in the work. That was the difference. I put in the work. And here's the thing. Not only you guys denied me. No one tried to work with me. They just said, no. Even going through my appeal process with the Court of Appeals, my attorney reached out and said, listen, whatever you guys need for this Miss Haynes Marcel to do in order to, you guys can oversee her, just police her. Do whatever you need to do. Give this woman this opportunity that, listen, I took a chance. Listen, and I made it through. You got to understand, there's a lot of people that weren't Black that didn't make it through. I made it through. I won an actual lottery, and it wasn't easy doing that. Trust me. application process wasn't easy. None of that wasn't easy. None of that it wasn't an easy. I put the work in. I deserve, right now, you're telling me the very reasons why I was denied from being Black, right? My husband's criminality, none of those things exist. You got to understand, just think about how that would make you feel. Like, honestly,
I understand.
we got to be humanitarians, right? All the policies were set up for me to fail from the gate. We got to do the right thing, you guys. We got to do the right thing. I'm a Black mother. Listen at this. I got 5 sons. Listen, and I'm trying to teach them. It's already likely that they'll end up in jail and in prison. And I'm teaching them to go after marijuana with the thing that got most of Black men in trouble in the first place. To teach them, hey, listen, mommy's going to do it the right way. Mommy's going to teach you guys to do it the right way. Listen,
we're gonna have to move on. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I happy to talk to you more about this. All I'd say again is there is a way, there is a path. I can't predict. I won't even attempt to give odds on what the outcome is, but there's something that exists, and we all should work together to try to make that work as well as it humanly can. That's all we can do right now, and let's not miss this opportunity. And let's test it. And I just don't know what else to do at this point. We can't just keep waiting for action from elsewhere. We have to abide by certain rules and laws. It's the only option in front of us, I believe, and I think it's a good one. I think our team has worked to craft a scoring system that addresses these issues, that invites that, and it's the things you said didn't exist, at the time, which is support and official acknowledgement of the disproportionate impact of the war on drugs, the failed war on drugs. We're there, and so let's test it. And you let me know what we can do on that. But we have people who can help anybody get through this process, and we got more to do. These rules won't be official. I just saw the date. I think it's June. And then they'll be able to start doing it. But we're never stopping work on this. And if you want some time to sit down with people who are writing those rules and writing that process, let's do that. Let's just do it. Let's try it. I think that's all I can offer you at this point. It really is. Other than tell you I hear you. I absolutely do. So feel free to reach out.
Thank you for hearing me. Thank you for listening.
Of course.
Thank you. That's all I can say.
Okay, and we will reach out if you do want to try to have that conversation in more depth. So thank you, Ms. Haynes Marcel. I appreciate your time and your willingness to engage with me in that conversation. I really do. It means a lot to me, so thanks. Okay, we're gonna go back to our list. We're gonna check back in with Kevin Shelton, who we were waiting to see. Mr. Shelton, are you able to unmute?
Chair Postman, it looks like he's disconnected from the meeting.
Yeah, I just saw that. Okay, just disappeared. All right, I am sorry. And we'll move on to the last person we have signed up, who's Peter Manning. Mr. Manning?
Hey, hello. Can everybody see me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you pretty well. I don't see you yet, sir.
Give me a second. I don't, it's not allowing me to do the video.
Okay. Well, you're coming through clearly though, so
okay.
Please.
Anyway, this is I read over the potential. First of all, let me just give some clarification to the statement I made a couple of weeks ago. I did not want everybody to take that I was saying that it was just Black men that were doing these robberies. That was not the message I was sending. The message I was sending was that there's a frustration in my community because it has come to realization in our community that these stores are predominantly owned by white people in their neighborhoods. So this is causing more frustration. This is something that if you go back and look, I've even spoke on in the past that this was going to be a problem in the future with our people. But it's interesting because I understand how this all evolved and where we're at now, but I'm looking at everything, you know, and I met with James Parabello, who was a liaison at that time for the LCB. And I met with him in 2016. And I was just going through the paperwork, and it says the meeting was a real this is the meeting that I attended with him. He says the meeting was a real eye-opener for me. I realized that based on institutional racism and socioeconomic factors, which I disagree with, well beyond the scope of the LC's jurisdiction, I disagree with that as well, the African American operators had trouble finding capitalization, partners, and legal representation to overcome the bureaucratic barriers to apply under I-5 or 5052. And so he went on to say that he had met with Rick Garza, the director. What my point here is, in 2015, I made it very clear that there wasn't enough Black participation in this cannabis industry, nor was there a pathway for us to move forward. And I even predicted that it was going to wind up with these white stores in our Black neighborhoods. That came to pass because I was able to see the footprint of the socioeconomic racism, or the systemic racism was in play. And it's in the same entity that you now, Mr. Postman, are head of. Those elements still exist there. What guarantee do we have that the same thing is not going to happen again? I read that rubric that the LCB is proposing to put out. It's completely flawed, in my opinion. There's a lot of loose ends, loopholes. There's a lot of what ifs and maybes. And I think it needs to be more pinpointed to the people that were affected by the war on drugs. It needs to not only highlight those people that were displaced by the LC members or that weren't given help. And, you know, it even came to light here just recently that we were doing our research on some of these predominantly white-owned stores. They weren't even transparent in their application process to even qualify for the stores that they have now. You know, they were not held to the scrutiny of that of Black people and brown people. You know, and this is like, I don't know what it's like. It's when Black people or brown people are done wrong, it's this super long study session when it comes to making those rights wrong. That's it just does, it makes no sense to me, Mr. Postman. And, you know, I think that we need to have a better, we need to set aside a meeting for the LCB to meet with the Black community. We need to do that.
You have 30 seconds.
Okay. And give clarification, I have no affiliation with Jim Buchanan, Emerald Hayes. Black Excellence Cannabis does not have any type of connection with anything other than pushing for social equity. We actually created the social equity. We helped write HB 2870. So I don't know where these speculations are coming from. We've worked on this since 2014. There was no one speaking for social equity in 2014, other than myself and Aaron Barfield. And Paula joined us in 2017. So just to give some clarity,
That's your 4 minutes.
We support Ollie Garrett, not because of anything other than Ollie Garrett has been real supportive of the Black community. She cannot go in there correct all the wrongs that were done. She is just one Black woman, but she is standing her ground and she's doing a good job. And it's not, I am not saying that because I'm looking for favoritism. I know that we have some type of communication or personal something. It's none of that. It's the woman who's doing her job. Why don't you so-called Black people attack the people that were there prior to Ollie Garrett, like I did in 2016? Why do you just, this woman is helping us, why are you guys going after her? How's that showing Black support? You're fighting and tearing a Black woman up before white folks. I don't get that. You guys need to get some correction.
Thanks, Mr. Manning. Appreciate your comments. Appreciate your clarification on your comments the other day, and appreciate your comments about my colleague. Everyone should know that Ollie Garrett has done more than any single person to move the ball on this issue, and holds every one of us internally accountable, and legislators and others. You know, just a few quick comments. You know, Mr. Manning asked, you know, how can we guarantee it'll be different? I can't guarantee anything. You know, they're like, you know, there could be litigation around this. I don't know. All I know is, and you said there was no path. I think there's a path. We are in a better place than we were when this system started. This didn't exist. And whether people don't like the rubric or not, we have what we think is the best legally sustainable system out there. And again, it doesn't mean that it's over. It doesn't mean that it's fixed. It's going to evolve. I bet it does get challenged from one side or the other or both. I don't know. And you know, as much as we hear from the people we've heard from today about the need to do more and more and more, I think we all know there are people who don't want us to do more. We weren't able to move legislation this last session. This is not the black cannabis industry versus the liquor board. You know, this is a much bigger dynamic than this. We're not standing in the way. What we're trying to do is get that progress here and to get a path forward. But again, I can't guarantee anything. I don't know who is going to win, who, you know, there's going to be a limited number of licenses available this year, but we're doing everything we can to get those out. Our licensing department is just working for day one here. So when they can start, they're going to start. We want, everybody in this agency wants to see this succeed. And we've built in some of the things that weren't there before, that you know, people today talked about. You know, where's the support? Where is whether you call that coaching or mentoring or whatever? How do we help? How do we get there? We're trying all that. So I'm just gonna really plead with people to try to give this system a chance. It's a new path. That's all I can say. It's different. It's something we didn't have before. And it's what we do have, and it's what we have here at the LCB authority to do. So I think it behooves all of us to go, okay, this is what we believe. Let's go all in and see if it works. Let's do it. And it's not the last word. The legislature is still going to keep working on this. We know that there's going to be advances. I'm confident of that, but we shouldn't have to wait for that. The LCB changed to those criminal background rules on our own because we felt, we saw it. We saw the impact. We know the importance. So we're doing these things, and it doesn't create the world that we all would like to see on day one. It does not. I will give you that. And no piece of legislation or rule set will. I think what we can hope for is a path to show that we can do this in an equitable and legally defensible way and create some success. So I do appreciate those that engage with us in the conversation. I still think it's unfortunate that, you know, people make a lot of allegations that it's just not a good use of any of our time. Still, you know, people are allowed to say what they want to say. It's lost on me what being Jewish has to do with any of this. And I wish we could move beyond that and have a conversation that's a little more real. I'm sorry, Member Garrett, I should have checked. Anything you'd like to add?
Oh, you've covered pretty much most of it, other than I just want to make clear to everyone that as far as I'm concerned, I've been very transparent with both the governor's office and the agency. And anytime there is a need for me to recuse myself from any conversation based on anything to do with my personal life, those recusals have taken place.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a red herring. It's unfortunate. So with that, we will adjourn the Liquor and Cannabis Board meeting for April 13th, 2022. We do have an executive management team meeting this afternoon where agency directors will report out to the board. There is not the opportunity there for public comment in that meeting, but we invite you all to join for more updates from agency divisions. With that, we're adjourned.